Our next session is a panel discussion on a theme that lies a very heart of literature. Why we write. Writing is not just about words on paper. It is an expression, a reflection, and connection. And today's conversation will explore the many reasons behind this creative journey. We are delighted to have with us two distinguished voices, Mr. Charles Assisi and Ms. Dhamini Ratnam, who will share their perspectives and experiences as writers. Guiding this discussion will be Rtn Harshad Divekar. I request Mr. Charles Assisi, Ms. Dhamini Ratnam, and Harshad Divekar to be on stage, please. I now also invite Past President Govind Khetan to formally introduce the panelists.
Good afternoon, friends. It's my honor and privilege to introduce this august panel. Let's start with Charles. Charles Assisi is a 27-year-old writer who operates at the intersection of technology, business, and public policy, always with a human-centered lens. As a columnist for Hindustan Times, he appears twice every weekend in First Principles, which explores the logic of modern systems like artificial intelligence and geopolitics, while Life Hacks offers introspective reflections on love, loss, and purpose. Charles has co-authored The Aadhaar Effect, a deeply reported book on India's pioneering digital identity project. Charles is also the co-founder of Founding Fuel, a platform known for challenging pre-existing assumptions. Charles' earlier roles include National Business Editor at the Times of India and Managing Editor at Forbes India, where he was part of the founding team. An alumnus of St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, Charles holds an MA in Economics from Mumbai University and an MBA in Finance from MET. He now teaches at St. Xavier's as guest faculty, encouraging students to think critically and write fearlessly. His creative influences include Atul Gawande, Sherwin Newland, and Hunter Thompson, mirroring his own voice, precise, humane, and quietly rebellious. Charles considers journalism the greatest privilege of his life, offering him access to brilliant minds worldwide. Recently, he embraced a strict physical fitness regime through regular gym workouts, discovering that fitness builds clarity, not vanity. And that strength, like good writing, is earned by living one deliberate day at a time. Please put your hands together for Charles.
Thank you for that generous introduction. I must also clarify that I'm a 27-year-old with a 19-year-old daughter, who's my older one, and a 13-year-old who's my younger daughter. Thank you for that. I compelled him to introduce me as a 27-year-old. I'm actually 53.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next guest on the panel is Dhamini Ratnam. Dhamini is a journalist based in Delhi and Mumbai who writes on the politics of gender, sexuality, art, and culture through a queer feminist lens. She has 17 years of experience as an editor and writer and has worked in news organizations like Mint, Hindustan Times, Mumbai Mirror, and Midday. Dhamini won the SOPA for Human Rights reporting in 2015 and a Global Investigative Journalists Conference Fellowship in 2017. A firm believer in sabbaticals, Dhamini has taken two. Very interesting. The first, to teach in a village school in Doda, and the other, to research on the social history of Section 377. Very impressive. Dhamini is the co-editor of an upcoming anthology on contemporary queer writings from India to be published by Westland. And Dhamini dreams of comprehending Yak Lacan theories with ease someday. That would be an achievement. Currently, Dhamini is with Hindustan Times as the national culture editor. So please put your hands together for the two eminent panelists for today. And to put this all together, we have our own Dr. Harshad Divekar, who will be the moderator for this session. Harshad is a strategic business leader and a storyteller at heart. He currently heads the AIS League at Schneider Electric, where he leads the global marketing and innovation across the company's medium voltage portfolio. With over 2 decades of leadership experience, Dr. Divekar brings together a sharp understanding of technology, markets, and human behavior. A voracious reader, a member of the Wordsworth Club, and a past president of our very own Rotary Club of Thane Hills, Harshad brings both insight and curiosity to conversations like today's with Charles and Dhamini. Over to you, Harshad.
Thank you, Govind, for the introduction and making me a doctor, which I am not. So, I have two very accomplished journalists and authors with me, as you can see from their profiles. And in this session, we'll be exploring the very foundational question in literature as to why we write. So in this world full of noise, what is that internal commitment which makes you write that narrative, find that documentation of truth, or analyze a system like Aadhaar, right? That's the whole point. So before everything else, what is that personal non-negotiable necessity that compelled you to become a writer? Maybe we can start with you, Charles.
The personal non-negotiable narrative.
Necessity.
Necessity. It's roti, kapda and makan. Frankly, I mean, it's roti, kapda and makan like it is for each one of us in this room. You have to find a job. And I figured that, I stumbled into writing, to be very, very honest. And there was no place in 1993 when I was looking out for a job when I graduated that would accommodate a science graduate. And I was not good enough to make it to the masters. So someone said, hey, why not try journalism? And one good thing about journalism is that it accommodates people of all kinds. And one kind editor was nice enough to take one young boy who just got in there and took me in. So called me an accidental journalist. And then once I got in there, and this kind gentleman, he looked at me and said, put him on the business desk. Now, I don't know why he put me on the business desk, because I had absolutely no clue about business. And once you're on the business desk, you hear people start talking about business. I could not make out what is PAT, like profit after tax. I could not make sense of all this jargon, EBITDA, and I could not make sense of, the economics that was being thrown about. And that's when it started to dawn that, much like the science that I was trained in, this whole domain is about curiosity. It's about how curious can you really be. And that's when you start digging deeper and deeper. And that's what writing is all about. So just to put that into perspective, by way of example, Harshad and I were talking the other day, and journalism has taught me to be shameless as well. So, when he said that he's into switchgear, I can be shameless enough to ask him, hey, what's a switchgear? All of us have heard about switchgear. And but how many of us really know what is a switchgear? And how does it work? And I don't mind sounding like an idiot. And he gave me a masterclass on what switchgears are. And oh, I did. Yeah, I did. So yes. So exactly. So one of the non-negotiables is say stupid, and ask as many shameless questions as well. And I finally could figure out how does the switch gears work, and I could understand how does the electricity grid work, and what are the complexities involved, the various levels. And that has been one of my non-negotiables really in writing, and that has and I really enjoy it, and it has allowed me to do deep dives, and it has allowed me to study, it has allowed me to continue studying, which is why I went on to study later. So that's in short.
I discovered why Charles is such a good journalist, because at end of that 1.5 hour call, I realized I spoke more than him, and he knew more about me than me about him. But anyway, the same question to you, Dhamini. What is the reason you are into writing?
I'm out. Okay. Why am I into writing is because I have a terrible fear of public speaking, so which unfortunately is not really assisting me now. Okay, no. Why am I into writing? I mean, I think Charles is a senior editor, and so he's kind of already specified some of the best things about being a journalist is that it really does accommodate all kinds of people with all kinds of curiosities, and really allows you rather to be stupid, allows you to ask questions. And I think all of these are absolutely wonderful reasons for me to stay in journalism, which, as we all know, is not an easy profession, right, anymore to be in. But having said that, what is the non-negotiable reason, like, I became a writer? I think for me it was really just about knowledge. I think it's always been about needing to add to the base of knowledge, and keep dipping into this well of knowledge that we all have, and we all dip into, and we all need to add to. And I think that as an avowed rationalist and an atheist, and somebody who has an immense amount of respect for the kind of cultures that we live in, it's very important for us to be very aware of things that are happening around us. And for me, journalism is really just adding to that system of knowledge. And that's why I wanted to be a journalist. Now, writer, of course, I feel is a slightly different thing, but not a very great and fun answer as Charles. So, but yeah, very, very honest.
Maybe following on, you write extensively about gender politics and identity, gender and identity issues, especially like Section 377, its history, etc.
Yeah.
So if I look at that space that you want to talk about, why do you want to work on that space? Is it about giving voice to something which history tries to erase? So why that subject, and what resonates with you about it, and why do you want to work on that?
So I think that partly one of the things that I started writing, so essentially, look, I come from a background of literature myself, and I studied literature in Delhi. I finished my master's, and then I realized I didn't want to live in Delhi anymore, and I ran away quite literally to Bombay. And I was lucky enough to meet an editor in Midday who sort of took me on board. So it was very much by accident, like you too, Charles. But I think as a journalist, you develop the story, like you develop your arc, right? Like of what interests you, and also a lot of it depends upon what your editor wants you to do, whether you like it or not. So I think it was a mix of both. But I do come from a background of really a very politically charged, and when I say political, I don't mean electoral and vote politics. I mean, as a student, we were expected to know the reason why things are happening, not just what is happening, but why is it happening? So coming from that perspective, and and then getting into a newspaper where you don't really have much space to talk about context, but you do have to have an understanding of the context. It kind of came very naturally to me to write about social issues. So it's not just Section 370, that's one part of it. But for me, it was always about human rights. It was always about the social lives of people, right? If we were to expand it a little further. And I think it just so happened at that time that there was a very massive people's movement that was taking birth right under our noses, quite literally. And nobody was talking about it because of something as how should I put it, as unnecessary as bias. Let me put it that way, right? Because of our prejudices and biases, we didn't want to talk about it, but that doesn't mean it was not happening. So for me, that was the real kind of interest. And again, luckily, I had editors who were very open for me to go and write about something which otherwise most newspapers were not already covering. And that's how I got involved in, I would go to Delhi, I would attend the Supreme Court hearings. I would reach out to people and write about them at a time when there was a great amount of stigma, associated with being queer. And I think it made me a better journalist. So, yeah.
Interesting. And what impact has your writing had because of on these issues?
Yeah, so I think that is a really great question, because I think when we start seeing one kind of writing come and also again, I'm very lucky because the time I was doing this is when social media also starts coming up, right? And so you have the opportunity to go viral, you have the opportunity to become trending, and so not just me, a lot of my peers of this time were privileged to kind of write about something, and then it kind of caught on like wildfire. But the impact, I think, is not just about what I have written. I think the impact actually is that readers took it. See, it wouldn't have mattered had readers not wanted to read this, right? And I truly believe that as journalists, we may be seeking the truth and we may be wanting to write about and uncover things, but if the reader does not want to read it, it does not. Yeah, sure. Right? So I think the impact is that, well, readers wanted to read about this, and then we kind of realized that we wanted to write more, and the impact that it was having was that it was going up to the Supreme Court and it was going up to the high courts who were quoting our articles, and who were then themselves recognizing that there is a very big shift happening in society, and that in turn I think was vital, I feel, also for the petitions that were in front of the Supreme Court in the first place, right? So it's a kind of a circle. I don't think that one person is responsible or one aspect is responsible, but I think that the zeitgeist works that way. And we kind of caught that wave of the zeitgeist in order to be able to popularize a subject on gender and sexuality that, Harshad, as we were discussing that day, even in our teens, yes, we simply did not have the words for it. But now you look at children today who are so smart, who are digital natives, who have an understanding which is so inflected by technology, right? And who have words and who have access to a language and an understanding of the human experience that we never did. And I think that's wonderful. That's very it makes me very hopeful.
Fantastic. Charles, for some people, writing is very spiritual, meditative, and for others it is an intellectual exercise, So what is it for you?
So let me put it this way, that writing is very, very hard work to begin with. It insists that you wake up in the morning or at a certain hour as you decide, and you are at it. So it requires a great amount of discipline. So I have come across people who talk about, how, writing is about inspiration and and all of that, about having a muse, etc., etc. But I can certainly tell you, much like most of us in this room, many of you in the room who wake up in the morning, you have to go to work at a certain hour. Writing is much like that. You have to have a certain kind of a discipline. So is it intellectual? Is it spiritual? Well, in much the same way that it is hard work for most of us in this room. Yes, it is very, very hard work. There are days when I don't want to get up. I want to stay in bed. But then I get up. I wake up. It is hard work. But why do I choose to do it? I choose to do it because when I am in there, it gives me a high. Now, is that high intellectual? Is that high spiritual? Frankly, I don't know the difference. I can tell you one thing for sure, is that I've been an atheist for as long as I can remember. Now, where does the thin line between what is intellectual and what is spiritual change? I really don't know. But when you are in that state of flow, as you call it,
Sure.
there have been times when, something has been burning in the kitchen and I have been asked, why is it that you didn't notice?
Sure.
Or something has been kept and I have been asked that, hey, what's the matter with you? Didn't you know something has been going on? There have been times when my kid has been crying. There have been times, is this what you call spirituality? Is this what you call intellectual? I don't know. Frankly, I don't know the difference. When you are deep in prayer, is this what you experience? Maybe. Is it an intellectual exercise? Yes, it's a great intellectual exercise as well. We were talking the other day. I said it sounded like a stupid question. It gives me a privilege, but frankly, it was an intellectual exercise as well. I spent time researching a project like Aadhaar. I got a perspective into how some of the finest minds in the world work. Was it intellectual? Yes, it was intellectual. But I got a front side view because I could ask questions. And I think it's much the same way for everyone else in the room. It's a combination of intellectual and spiritual when you get into the flow. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
Great answer.
Straight away.
No, that was a great answer. Absolutely. Okay, moving on. We are probably facing the biggest technological disruption we have had in writing probably forever, right?
Yeah.
You have AI is here, and writing technical flawless text is very cheap and fast. Now the question is, though AI can generate functional prose in seconds, then what is the non-replicable value of a human writer as we go forward? Maybe we start with you, Dhamini. Okay, we can start with Charles because of his technology background, for sure.
Okay. Okay. So I have a deep interest in technology. That's I just by and I have been on this. So I have been exploring AI models for a long time now, and this is something which is interesting. This is fascinating, actually. Historically, such kind of disruptions have happened. Just to put things into perspective, when the typewriter happened, for example, okay, there were writers, for instance, who refused to use the typewriter because they thought that, using a typewriter would defile the act of writing. It would become impure, and they insisted on writing with a pen. Now, let's extrapolate that into the age of AI. Okay, and let me give you a personal example, for instance. Okay, now I have learned a bit of coding. Okay, and how many of you in this room use ChatGPT? There we go. Everyone in this room is using ChatGPT, or if not ChatGPT, you are using Gemini. You are using whatever. You're using Perplexity, something, right? Now, quick question: how many of you in the room are coding in some form or the other? Okay. How many of you are trying prompts? Okay. Experimenting with prompts? Okay. Now, if you are experimenting with prompts, okay. Now, I worked on a master prompt for myself, okay. I figured one thing, that this is a master prompt that I can work as a writer, as a journalist. By way of example, this is a master prompt that exists with me that would, I just put it into GPT or I put it into Gemini or put it into Perplexity, and all I got to do is just replace the word. One word, say for example, I am researching space, as in space tech or whatever. I'm researching Thane, history of Thane. I just have to just change that, and I just run this master prompt, and everything that is possibly available across the public domain is suddenly available to me. All I have to do is now click, 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 and go and explore, which would otherwise have taken me, I don't know how long. Now, as far as I see it, what it has done is saved time for me dramatically. Now, is this cheating? No. I have amplified my productivity.
Sure.
You don't have to be a coder to do this. This is something all of us can train ourselves to be in. This is something all of us should be doing, and why should we not be doing this? And I'd speak not as a journalist, but I think all of us in this, in contemporary times, you should be doing this to save times. Why should you be working 8 hours or 10 hours when you can work 6 hours? Which is one part to it. Now, when it comes to writing, would I use GPT to write? Answer, no. Let me put that into perspective once again. Okay, let's say for example, I am working on a theme. By way of example, if I am researching the history of, since we're in Thane, let's say we're talking about Thane. Okay, what's happening out here? Now, everything that is there in the public domain will come up to me, that's available to everyone. Okay, but what about the Lit Fest that is happening right now? How did this Lit Fest actually come about? Okay, who is Atul? What is the motivation that drives Atul? There is a human being called Atul. What drives him? What about Harshad? How do I know that Harshad, who is sitting here, okay, that he has a family? How do I know that he is an expert on switch gears? How do I know that he has got a young daughter whom he dotes on? How do I know about his wife? Now, no prompt is going to tell me this. It is not there in the public domain. He's got a LinkedIn profile for sure. It's not there. But it's the conversation with him that tells me this. Now, of course, you can tell ChatGPT that, I want this in so-and-so style after putting in all this. Okay? But I've noticed that there is only so much it can do. But after I collect all these details, there's a certain structure I want. I want it to sing like music. I want my piece to sing like music. It's got to follow a certain narrative. If I like Hunter Thompson, the writer, it's got to follow a certain rhythm. I got all these details to be injected at the right place. So I can get a background of this Lit Fest in no time, but now I need to slow down, I need to pause, I need to think. So am I going to be replaced? Yeah, if I'm someone who does the drudge work, yes, I will be replaced. If I'm a truly creative person, no. If I'm going to use this to push the boundaries for sure. But I'm going to work harder to stay relevant. Otherwise, I will be replaced. I don't know if that does it answer your question, Dhamini?
Fantastic answer. Fantastic answer. So maybe Dhamini, since such a comprehensive answer Charles has
Really?
given,
Yeah, wonderful. I'm
I
so
will
glad.
ask you about something a little different.
Yeah.
With all its benefits, AI is inherently biased because it uses information in public space, and especially the space that you write on, that is marginalized and stories and social stories. That is something which is always underrepresented in the public data.
Yeah.
So what is your view on the how do writers tomorrow
Yeah.
manage the bias which AI will bring, and how do writers and editors counter it in public space?
So I think that people talk about the big threat that AI poses to journalism, but I have a very surprisingly optimistic take on this. Surprising because I'm not usually optimistic. And I feel that more than this being the age of AI, I think actually this is the age of journalism. Because you need a journalist today to verify, to know and to be able to do the things that they do, put into practice quite literally what we do every day, in order for you to know that what you are reading is accurate, is the truth, right? And a lot has been said about, oh, we live in a post-truth world, and there is this whole this sort of materialistic perspective, of truth does not matter. And I think that is all very well to be said in a classroom, but when we are living our lives, our day-to-day lives, we need to know facts, we need to know टमाटर का भाव क्या है, to what exactly is it that the Prime Minister or the Home Minister or some particular business CEO has said to the stakeholder, what is the Prime Minister promised. We need fact checking, we need accountability checking, because that is how we live our lives. We don't live our lives in post-truth ways, right? So it is all the more important, I think, then for journalists to come and do their jobs, right? Because this is what we've been doing, I mean, before AI and whatever, right? And as far as bias is concerned, I have a slightly different take on it, which is that we are never going to be free of bias, right? What we can aspire to be free from is inaccuracy. We should be aiming for not allowing lies to govern our decisions, not allowing untruths to govern our opinions. That is what I think we should aspire to. Bias to hoga, and ultimately it depends upon an individual's own understanding of their biases for it to change, right? So but having just one more thing to add to this idea of AI as an instrument, and I think, Charles, you're absolutely right about this, because let's even go back to the advent of the printing press, right? Like the Gutenberg, which is what, 1663, 1683 sometime, right? At that time, the idea that somebody could write itself was such a revolutionary idea, right? And why was it revolutionary? Because to write was to have power. And I think that essentially the lives that we have been leading over these past, 4-5 centuries, look at India's own history, right? Our own national movement. The agenda has been to gain empowerment, has been to gain individual rights, right? And so I don't think it is useful even to say that, oh, AI is a threat. It's not. It's an instrument, right? But what it does require us to do is to turn around and say, I have to be, to use that wonderful description that the gentleman used to introduce you, we have to be deliberate about how we use it. And that is something that I think that we anyways are doing in all other aspects of our life, right? We don't lead indeliberate lives. So, yeah. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it's a very good perspective. So just a short take. So you work on business systems, business side of journalism, and so does AI, which makes a lot of things cheap, make deep investigative work more critical, like she says, or less financially viable?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
So in the age of AI,
Yeah.
as the costs of what you call research and many other things go down, does deep investigative journalism become more viable and more relevant, or less financially viable for the media houses?
Well, does it become more financially viable? Actually, let me put it this way, that if anything is called for, is that there is a requirement for more investigative journalism than there ever was, and there is more requirement for more investigative books than there ever was, because it is so much easy to spread misinformation. And this is something, I just want to take a moment, sorry, because since you've been so generous to offer me this platform to speak from, and I have a grouse with us Indians, okay, in general. We don't think twice before going out and having a meal at a restaurant for a family of 4 or 5 and spending 2,500 rupees, okay, or 3,000 rupees as the case may be. We will order from Swiggy and Zomato as the case may be, okay. But when it comes to buying a book that costs 250 rupees or 400 rupees as the case may be, okay, we will hold on. Why?
Or even subscribe to.
Or even subscribe to something, okay. Now we are, okay, our scriptures say, and we worship Saraswati, okay, but when it comes to the dakshina that we must give Saraswati, we hold back. And this is my grouse against us as people. Why? When Saraswati comes home, we should welcome her.
I agree with you. I think most of the audience will also agree.
So it's much the same thing. My point is,
Sure.
I hope I'm making this is this comes with with a deep degree of sadness that I say this. That is there room for investigative journalism? We live in an era of mistruth.
Sure.
And this is the time when we should be more open. We should be more welcoming of truth. Much like Dhamini said, that there is mistruth. And we should be more welcoming.
And a fantastic answer. So let's move to the last part, where how about the craft of writing? What is the rigor process that you guys follow when you're writing a piece, and is it different when you do a short form, say a article, and what is different when you write a book, say like an Aadhar effect, right? So maybe one by one you guys can go. Maybe we start with Dhamini.
So I am actually in the process of just about sending out the proofs of an anthology that I have worked on and co-edited with another colleague of mine, Dhruvo Jyoti. And the idea of this anthology was to sort of try and look at the stories of queer people today. And when we think of queer as an identity of gender and sexuality, but we're also trying to sort of understand that, we don't lead vertical lives, we lead horizontal lives, right? So we have identities across class, caste, region, language. And so we've essentially tried to bring in and try and create a representative document that we hope will be as relevant, say 10 years from now, or 2 years from now, or 1 year from now. And the craft, I think, and of course I'm also simultaneously working on another book, which is more about the social history of the LGBT movement, which is in terms of just who we were in the 80s and the 90s, and how have we become who we are today. For me, that is really fascinating. I think the craft of writing really is a certain degree of self-flagellation. As Charles said, you have to keep telling yourself to do it even if you don't want to. For me, it is about simplicity. It all comes back to the reader. We talk about AI, we talk about books, we talk about journalism, but none of it matters if people are not reading anymore. And if people are not reading anymore, then what we are essentially doing is condemning ourselves as a society to a future of not even ignorance, to a future of no conversation. We are condemning ourselves literally to a life where we have nothing to say to each other if we don't read, right? And so the craft of writing, if I were to start from there, that I want somebody to read me, why will they read me? Of course, first I'm offering truth, I'm offering fact check, I'm offering verification, etc., etc. All those boring little things that we have to do. Like Charles said, discipline. But they will read me if I'm readable, right? And I think the craft of writing is simplicity. There is great beauty in saying something very simply. It doesn't mean you can't be poetic. It doesn't mean you can't use metaphors. In fact, I think our Indian culture, Urdu le lo, ab Hindustani le lo, take Tamil, take Bengali, every language has its own history of adages and, like some kind of like similes. My father used to call me what? I don't even know. So basically, my father is Tamil, and he would use a specific term for me, which refers to a green corn cob, which basically means you're very naive. He used to call me that when I was a child, and he would keep calling me a green corn cob, right? I mean, so we have histories like that, which I think like we have beautiful kind of, ab Urdu bhi le lo, like look at the kind of Hindustani language that emerged out of it, right? We have this history of languages that we can seriously keep uncovering and learning from. And the beauty of all of that is that it is so simple. So really for me, it just boils down to that, simplicity.
Interesting. How about you, Charles?
So, the difference between writing a journalistic piece versus writing a book. So let me put it this way: is that how you would?
Yes.
Okay. So it depends really on the nature of the beast, is how I put it. So. If it is writing a book, I'm fresh out of writing my second book, which hasn't hit the shelves. It's something that was pitched to me, and I said, this may be boring. This was on Hindalco. Hindalco, I'm guessing most of you would know of the company. Okay, so as a business journalist, quite frankly, I have heard of this company. I have reported on this company. It is the world's largest aluminium manufacturer. Okay, now I have known about it. I've reported. I'm familiar with the balance sheet, etc., etc., etc. Now it is only when you start getting into the innards of the company that you start talking to the real people out there, and you start traveling across. That's when you realize that, oh my God, what hit me out there? It's not just about how aluminium is made. It is not just about how iron ore is dredged. It is also about people, real people, who take real decisions that can fundamentally change the world. Everyone familiar with Kumar Birla in this room? Okay, I'm assuming. Okay. Okay. No. Okay. I hear a gentleman say no. Okay. Okay. Now, my image of him, my impression of him, despite having met him, is that he is this silent, calm man. It's only on getting to know him that I realized that He is not what you think he is. He's probably one of the most decisive creatures who can absolutely cut through, who does not have the patience to listen to nonsense, who can take a decision about a few $1 billion like that, and who can listen to his gut. Now, how do you make such kind of decisions? Now, that's where the big question comes in. So, this is not a book on aluminium per se. For me, it is about the people out there. How does someone make these decisions? What about the people who run those plants? You know, in the middle of nowhere, why is it that you go there and you build those plants in the middle of absolutely nowhere? How do you motivate them? I worked on a book on Aadhaar. How do you create an identity system for 1.4 billion people? What does it take? When you go in there is when you realize that what you and I, all of us now carry in our pockets, what went into it, the politics of it, the economics of it, the technology that went into it, the geopolitics behind it, the economics behind it. Now, to understand it, to wrap your head around all of that, it's tough. Frankly, I love to wake up at 4 a.m. That's why I love to wake up at 4 a.m. to practice the craft. Because when you are going in so deep, that's the most silent time you can get to yourself. And that's why I like to hit the gym at a certain hour, because that's the only time you get to cut off from all the other noises in your head and you're just at it.
Flow time.
That's your flow time. And then when you get back, you just go back into that flow. You know, I think that's spirituality or intellectual, whatever you may want to call it.
Call it meditative.
Call it meditative. But this, you know, you build these pockets of time, you build these pockets of stillness. I think that's how the whole process works. And that's how, for me, you know, I don't think I see much of a difference there when working on a journalistic piece as well. It may be short form, it may be long form, but pretty much works in a certain rhythm because you're now engaging with people, what drives them, and then the final output that comes through may appear like a business piece. But at the end of the day, if you don't read it, I have failed.
May I ask Charles a question?
Go ahead.
With your permission.
For sure.
Because it's fascinating, right? This idea of the flow. And I'm just wondering, when you're in the flow, how do you balance family life? How do you balance being father, husband, you know, manager of cook, manager, like how do you balance that and stay in the flow?
I think work-life balance is a myth, if you ask me. Frankly, if you ask my wife, she will certainly tell you very honestly, and I have no qualms in admitting to this, that I am a bad husband. And she's made no.
No, you're not.
I can certainly tell you this, and I you know, when you are in the flow, you are in the flow. Okay. There are times when I have to take time out very, very deliberately. I'm irritable. I'm like, don't break my flow. I certainly think that, you know, I'm not kind enough to my kids, you know, because they're irritating, you know, their voices just get in my way. You know, I'm like, don't break my flow, for heaven's sake, you know, here I'm changing the world and, you know, you want your food. What's the matter with you? You know, so.
Only a writer can have this kind of ironic self-awareness. That is.
No, honestly, but I'm sure this is true for all of us working professionals out here. And I'm sure that this is true for spouses of those people who are married to working professionals, that why doesn't my spouse see this part? You know, it's not just about a writer, but I'm sure, you know, your spouse may be working and involved in some, you know, some nonsense, whatever it may be, you know, like he's working on some switchgear stuff and, you know, his wife may turn around, yeah, Harshad, please, yaar, bachche ko kuch to do.
I think she does it every day. But anyway.
No, and then you don't even get paid enough for it, Charles, do you?
No, so that's the other thing. It's interesting that Dhamini brought this up. That we don't get paid enough for it. So it's very interesting since she brought this up that we don't get paid enough for it. That is very true, and that's the other lesson that's come up, that we don't get paid enough for it because hell, we haven't learned to ask for it. And once you put your foot down and say, I need to be paid this much, or sorry.
But I have to add one thing to it, which is going to sound mildly pompous, but
Sure.
but I think it would apply to you as much as I feel it applies to me, which is that I don't think we entered into this profession with any idea of the amount of money that we are going to make at all.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
It was never about the money. And
It was never
has
about the
been
money. It was never about the money. Yeah. So
which is why this anxiety of AI is so real for us, is because it's an economic issue.
Yes, it is.
Fundamentally, it is an economic problem.
Yeah.
But none of the answers we gave actually was about the economics of it, because we are so concerned about philosophical things like truth and fact and conversations at the dinner table 20 years from now.
But frankly, that's why I said, right at the upfront earlier on, that this is roti kapda makan at the end of the day.
True.
And I think that's what matters to everyone, that how much can you make out of it. And, if most newspapers, most magazines, you after working for about 15 days for something, okay, if you're going to get paid some 5,000 rupees or 7,000 rupees to write an article, 15 days, 5,000, 7,000, 10,000, sorry, it's not worth it. I think we know the economics of that. I can certainly tell you this. I'm happy to put the numbers out. But working on a book, it's not worth the money. You work on a book, you're going to get paid about 4 lakhs or 5 lakhs in India. It's going to take about 3-4 years of your life. And if you think it's glamorous, sorry, you're going to be glamorous when you come to a lit fest, when you get treated well. Okay? But is it going to fill your stomach? No.
So in spite of you saying roti kapda makan, I don't think why we write is because of roti kapda makan. Otherwise, it would not have been this way. So I think for both of you, it is a calling. That is why we write. So probably I'll wrap up quickly. So we've covered the personal necessity, the disruptive future that AI is bringing, and also the craft of writing. Whatever we say, whatever AI brings in terms of the functional prose, the unique human insight is what drives writing and will continue to drive writing. So Charles and Dhamini, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom, craft and calling. And it was great to hear you and your perspective. Thank you for joining us in LitFest, and I think let's have a round of applause for both.
Thank you, Ashok, for having us. Thank you for listening to us so patiently.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Charles Assisi and Ms. Dhamini Ratnam, for sharing such honest and inspiring reflections. I'd like to also thank PP Harshad Divekar for moderating this session so thoughtfully. A big round of applause, please. I'd like to call on Dr. Sujata Jadhav, Rotarian Srirang and Aditi Date, Rotarian Gautam Banik, Rotarian Aniket Kanade, President Samir Limaye, and Convener Atul,